Hello YouTube, this is TM Trainer with a few more battles this week. I begin with last week's team against TM Ruby, who thinks that this team is rather stupid. We'll just see how stupid it is. I begin with faking out on his Amoonguss, expecting the fake out from Kangaskhan, but I end up getting Hydro Cannon off and realizing that Mega Kangaskhan is going to use Double Edge, which is just enough to knock out Blastoise. His Kangaskhan is now in the red though, but he brings out his Salamence, and he gets an Intimidate off on Pikachu, and that Volt Tackle won't do much. I expect the Double Edge to go off on Pikachu, and then I get Thunderbolt off on Kangaskhan. He switches in Bisharp, and I take out Charizard, expecting the Sucker Punch, and a Stone Edge misses on Pikachu. I get a Volt Tackle off, and I one-hit KO that Salamence. He sends back in Amoonguss. Amoonguss Rage Powders, but I substitute, and I Volt Tackle again onto that Amoonguss, taking down some more damage. He uses Iron Head and fades that substitute, seeing right through my plan. I use Protect this next turn, and he uses Sucker Punch to take care of Pikachu, while Amoonguss uses Spore. I send back in Mega Charizard Y while he protects with Amoonguss. He uses Sucker Punch on Charizard, but it's not enough to KO, and I use Heat Wave to kill his Bisharp. Super effective, one-hit KO, enough. And here comes the last turn where I overheat on his Amoonguss. Yeah, this team sure was stupid, Ruby. Of course. Poor Blueby. Being bad at this game must be a terrible, terrible fate. In this next battle, I use my new team for this week that is built around Mega Blastoise. I lead with Trevenant and Talonflame against his Lucario and Liepard. Now, here's where I make my first mistake, as I get faked out in the first turn and Rock Slided to KO Talonflame. Did not expect seeing that off of Lucario, normally carries a fighting and steel type move, and I get a burn off onto Liepard. I send in Politoed because Lucario is the biggest threat, and I can't send out Blastoise because he's too slow. Close Combat goes off on Politoed, but since he's very bulky, he survives. I use Scald after that, and he gets burned, and he's also low in his defenses. Next turn, I'm going to double protect and try and see if I can completely get rid of Lucario based off of burn damage. It fails on Trevenant, so the taunt gets off, and now I can't use anything like Trick Room or Will-O-Wisp. But that's fine with me because he sends out Rotom Wash in the next turn. So the biggest threat right now is that Rotom Wash. So I'm going to Scald it, and then I'm going to get rid of it with Wood Hammer, which I do. I got lucky in the fact that Hydro Pump had missed, because Politoed probably would have been killed in that turn. He sends back out Liepard, but I expect that Fake Out onto Politoed, and I do a Wood Hammer on Gardevoir, which is a critical hit. I protected with Politoed because I expect more health to come back. I try to double protect here, but I get stuck, and then I get also Encored into using Protect. Now I'm going to send back out Blastoise, and it probably should have took out Politoed and switched him back in to get that Rain boost again. But it's going to be alright since they're both heavily damaged. I get Charmed, and they expect to Protect, but that doesn't happen. I'm not going to use Water Spout because I could take damage, and that will just screw over the game for me. So I wait and get taunted and Moonblasted, but I use Ice Beam on Gardevoir to take it out. And now from this point on, it's a burned Liepard, and I could just protect. He forfeits, and I win the battle. Now the reason that I built this team is to deal with these stupid pesky Smeargles. So I send out Machamp in this first turn with Trevenant, and here's where I make my mistake though. I should have just protected with Machamp because I have that Lumberry for those Dark Voids, but I wanted to keep Trevenant awake too, and I forgot that Weavile had Fake Out. I used Bullet Punch to get some damage off on Weavile, uses Home Claws, and of course here comes the Dark Void to put both of my Pokemon to sleep. Lots of sleeping on the field. So, I take an Ice Slash right to Trevenant, which is a one-hit KO now, and uses Dragon Dance onto his Smeargle. So I'm in quite the awful position. I sent out Talonflame and I protected this turn, and I hope that Machamp wakes up this turn to take out that Kangaskhan. Lucky for me, he does, and he one-hit KOs it with a Dynamic Punch. He sends back out Smeargle, and in this turn, I Brave Bird it, and I expected that Sash, so then I also follow up with a Bullet Punch to take care of it. I hate those Smeargles and those leads. And I take the Night Slash, but Talonflame has done his job. I send out my Rhydon, and I have Gengar out there now. He uses Dazzling Gleam off of Gengar onto both of these, and I use Knockoff to kill that Gengar, and I use Rock Slide to KO the Weavile, which results in another battle victory for yours truly. In In this last battle, he sends out Ferrothorn and Gyarados, and I send out my Talonflame and Machamp in the first turn. Now an Intimidate goes off, so the attacks will be weakened. He switches out into Rotom Heat, expecting me to Brave Bird or Flame into him, but I don't, and I use Dynamic Punch on that Gyarados. Of course, he's got Lumberry, so it doesn't do that much, and he's also not confused like I'd like. I saw Talonflame going out, but I need Tailwind up, so I get that off before he is killed, and I use Dynamic Punch onto that Rotom Heat to confuse it. Now I've got Tailwind up, and I'm doing pretty well. He switches out into Ferrothorn, and he calls me pretty well. I Scald onto that Ferrothorn, and I use Dynamic Punch into Gyarados, so he gets a free turn. Now, I Protect with Politoed, and I Dynamic Punch on that Gyarados because I want it confused, and I'm expecting Power Whip to go off. I easily predict, and I go that turn, easily getting confusion onto Gyarados, and I use Dynamic Punch and a Ferrothorn now. Now both Pokemon are confused, but he gets Waterfall onto Machamp, and Ferrothorn hurts itself in this confusion. Waterfall goes off onto Machamp, and Machamp is KO'd. I use Scald on Gyarados, and Ferrothorn hurts itself again. Now I send out my Blastoise and Mega Evolve and do what I was supposed to do, but I don't know if Water Spout would have done that much, so I wind up going back and deciding I'm going to Ice Beam. He Dragon Dances on the Gyarados, which I'm not sure why. I use Aura Sphere to knock out that Ferrothorn, and I Scald that Gyarados to KO it completely. He sends out his Charizard and his Rotom Heat, and I expect Charizard Y, but I'm lucky to see X, and I'm really happy to see it because I'm going to be able to destroy it. Volt Switch goes off, and I don't KO Rotom Heat like I would have liked, but I Protect now, and he uses Dragon Claw onto Politoed. Now, I use Scald, and I get rid of that Rotom Heat, so now it's just one-on-one versus Charizard X and Politoed. I Protect with Politoed, and I'm going to use Aura Sphere. He goes for Mega Blastoise, but it's not enough to KO enough. And then he Dragon Claws onto Politoed, still not a KO enough, and I use Aura Sphere to lock in and lock down the battle. Thanks for watching, and as usual, if you like any of the builds on these teams, shoot me a message. Like, comment, and subscribe if you want some more. Coming back for weekends today. Be sure to have yourself a happy, remember all things this weekend.